And I think we are live. Let me check. Cosmonauts are on fire these days. They can't wait, especially when alpha is being leaked. So maybe, yeah, we're live. Awesome. I'm not joined by one, but two founding members today of the Quicksilver team, which is a very, very exciting project. Launching partner of Interchain security, implementing the liquid staking module as proposed by Zaki, and also Interchain accounts. So I'm trying to get as much out of you guys today as possible, also in terms of the rollout, maybe some hints what people can do, cosmonauts can do today to potentially maximize eligibility to get their hands on early on QCK tokens. We'll see what I can get out of you guys. But first of all, thank you for doing this. Really appreciate it. How's everything going on your end?
Awesome. Yeah,
it's great. Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Awesome. Yeah, and I think before we get into details how the kind of like liquid staking module works, there's also recently been a lot of discussions around validator whitelisting and those kind of things and governance, right? There's a lot of like technical things that come with liquefying assets, besides just, oh yeah, you can have more yield opportunities now in Cosmos. So, but before we get into that, maybe you can give, we could start with, I don't know, Vish. What is your kind of like Cosmos journey or crypto journey in general, how you got into the ecosystem, and how you, I think both of your co-founders, and I think there's another third co-founder of Quicksilver, how you initially started the project and maybe kind of like some timelines with it.
Yeah, so like for me personally, like my background is economics. I was doing some research on like monetary models and prudential regulation, so which is like regulating banks. And I did get into that financial world for some time, and then I very soon realized that it's pretty much a big scam. And then I'm like, okay, this is not where I belong. And I moved on to like a bunch of neobanks where we're trying to disrupt banking and financial service industry. But I didn't really find those solutions appealing because at the end of the day they were centralized. Like I soon realized that these solutions, as they scale, same problems. That's when I got into blockchain and crypto as a whole. And I very soon actually just jumped into Cosmos. So I didn't have that long Ethereum probation period. And that was primarily because of protocol governance. I really liked the idea that users could control the product that they're using, which I think is quite fundamental. So yeah, I joined Course One as a research analyst. And I was working on like researching liquid staking models right away. And that's where like this whole Cosmos liquid staking thing came up. Joe was working on it before. I think he was one of the guys who designed the first liquid staking implementation Cosmos, I think back in 2019 in Berlin. So the ideas were there. And then like I was also there researching this, and the three of us got together at Chorus and were like, hey, let's do this. And here we are doing it.
It's crazy to me. Like I think I'm continuously learning how early you guys as like core builders in Cosmos have been with so many things, right? I mean, Cosmos itself was kind of like pioneering proof of stake, but then you already pioneering liquid staking and a lot of DeFi innovations, a lot of NFT innovations, right? And interoperability standards. So there's so many things that I think cosmonauts always get surprised. Somebody was saying, is there another chain going live? Oh my God, I'm losing track now with all these chains going live in Cosmos. But this stuff has been in the works for years. And there's a lot of innovation going on. And you just mentioned Chorus One. I think they're also one of the probably most important and most essential contributors to the Cosmos ecosystem over the years. One of the earliest validators, Cosmos bulls through and through. I also met Brian, who is the co-founder or founder of Chorus One. He was also at Cosmos, and yeah, a lot of cool things that you guys are doing. And yeah, Joe, from your perspective, maybe you can share a little bit on your journey.
Sure. So I got into crypto right at the end of the 2017 bull run, as the absolute worst timing to do it. And first of all, it was kind of just it was mostly around kryptonite based shitcoins mainly. Plus Monero. Monero is not a shitcoin, but yeah, everything else in that industry kind of just doesn't really amount to an awful lot. And then I was looking for a role at the time and the job with Chorus One came up to essentially build out their staking infrastructure. So I joined Chorus One in, I think, May of 2018, and it spent essentially the next year between then and when Cosmos launched, focusing on how Cosmos works, understanding it at a low enough level that we as Chorus One could offer the best-in-class staking solution, high availability validators, etc. So there was that entire year really was spent just digging into Cosmos code, Tendermint code, learning how everything worked at like the very, very lowest level. And then when it came to Cosmos launch, and then the hackathon in Berlin in 2019, and then there was a hackathon in Seoul a couple of months later, or in fact, months later. And in those hackathons, specifically the first one, we, with actually Sunny and Dave from Sika as well, they were involved in the kind of initial design, but built out the first proof of concept of liquid staking on Cosmos. Obviously, way ahead of its time in terms of how applicable it was to the space at the time. There was no real use case for it. Chorus One did a whole bunch of research off the back of that, and did a liquid staking kind of report that was funded by the ICF. But we've been in liquid staking for kind of the last, I guess, 3 years now. And it's something that went on the back burner because we didn't have IBC, because we didn't have other use cases for all these liquid assets. It went on the back burner for a couple of years and didn't really get much attention because there was no call for it. Fast forward to last year, Osmosis launches, IBC's got its first real use case. And then, obviously, there's then a plethora of protocols that launch that you then have the ability to essentially take your atoms off the hub and use them elsewhere. And suddenly you're faced with this problem of folks that are now unbonding their atoms that were staking previously because they can get better returns elsewhere. And all of a sudden, liquid staking is now relevant. So we were working at Chorus One with Vish, with Ankit and a couple of the other guys at Chorus. We were focusing on liquid staking as a zone and the concept around that. And it was something that Chorus decided that they didn't want to take forwards. They wanted to focus on infrastructure, which absolutely makes sense from their point of view. And the Cosmoverse conference in Portugal last year, I attended that. It was obviously the first conference for a couple of years, and I got massive FOMO from all of these amazing developers, many of whom I've known for the last nearly 4 years now. And suddenly I want to be building again. I've been on the infrastructure side for too long. I want to build code, and so I came back from Portugal going, okay, I'm going to leave Chorus. I'm going to build something. I'm not sure what it is. And it was this very, I guess, fortunate series of events where Chorus decided they didn't want to build what has now become Quicksilver. I did want to build something. Obviously, Vish was involved. Roy, our the co-founder, was in a similar situation. So we all everything kind of panned out quite nicely. And that's kind of what led us to where we are now.
That's awesome. Yeah. Seems like a lot of brain juice over the years has gone into this. And here we are. Today we'll learn a lot about where you guys stand. We'll learn about interchain security, which is one of the coolest features that will come to the Cosmos Hub itself, which you guys want to use at launch to secure the Quicksilver zone, which will be its own sovereign chain in Cosmos. Also the liquid staking module. And I think we can start right there because maybe for some people that are maybe new to crypto, that haven't been around in the DeFi summer 2020, right, which is when all these DeFi protocols went crazy. We had a food coin meme coin season back then, if you remember that. But for those that have missed that and don't really know what staking or liquid staking is and superfluid staking, they get confused with all these terms. Can you explain a little bit what's the product market fit? What do you see in liquid staking solutions on the market? Why is it so cool, and why are you so excited about building it? And whoever wants to take that question first.
I can jump in that one. I think from our perspective, I think one of the biggest, it's not so much an issue with of staking, but a side effect of proof of stake is that you bond your assets to provide security, provide collateral for these validators. So if they misbehave, obviously this collateral gets slashed. But with the maximum slashable value of 5% of your capital, you've got 95% of your capital is sat there not being utilized. So if you've got a zone of with $5 billion staked like the Cosmos Hub, you've got $4.5 billion of that stake is sat there doing absolutely nothing. It's not being utilized. It can't be slashed. It serves no purpose other than it's sat there. So that's an awful lot of capital to be sat around and be underutilized. And with a burgeoning DeFi ecosystem within Cosmos, like that $4.5 billion from one chain is going to go far. Actually, if you then extrapolate that out across all of the IBC connected chains, I think there's 30 or so currently. I lose count because it changes all the time.
I think 45 or something like that.
45. Wow, this is crazy.
Yeah.
So we're talking now easily $45-50 billion of capital that is locked up, securing these chains, but actually isn't being utilized. So if we can unlock that $45 billion, like that's going to make a massive difference to the success of DeFi and Cosmos.
Yeah, and so that's definitely one of the big points of why liquid staking. And I think another fundamental reason for liquid staking in Cosmos is that I think in many ways it's like a prerequisite for a DeFi ecosystem to emerge, right? Because the Cosmos ecosystem has adopted this path of high staking APRs. And the conventional wisdom was that, hey, you have these high staking APRs, it'll bootstrap economic security. And once these staking APRs fall, a DeFi ecosystem will emerge out of this low staking APR environment. But it doesn't look like that's going to happen, right? With especially the kind of composability we have, the cross-chain composability we have, the entire IBC world is becoming one interconnected economy. So the risk here is that this locked capital continues to remain locked. It just moves from chain to chain in search for high staking APRs, and there's no real DeFi ecosystem coming out of it. And if you look at it from a DeFi application specific blockchains perspective, they have to give out high staking APRs to actually compete with staking and with other chains, and they also have to give out high incentives to actually be competitive. And obviously this incentive dishing is not really sustainable. So what liquid staking does is it removes this inherent competition between staking and DeFi that exists even on a user level, right? Users have to make that choice today. With my asset, do I put it in a liquidity pool? Do I stake it? Or do I do something else with it? And a lot of that something else is coming up, and a lot more should come up, right? And that's what liquid staking aims to do.
Awesome. We have nearly 60 people in the chat. Please, everybody, tell your fellow cosmonaut friends to join the stream right now, because there's going to be alpha leaked also in this video. And I think it's always cooler when you watch these things live in real time. You can also drop questions. We'll get into this later. We'll also get into stuff like this when airdrop, right? So yeah, share this with all your friends. Make sure that people are aware that this is happening right now, because it's very, very essential. And it's also potentially, like you said, merging the kind of staking for security purposes with DeFi and yield chasing purposes, which up until now, right, between you can't do the two at the same time. I mean, there are some solutions on the market already, some more complex solutions, other solutions that also require validator whitelisting. Then there's superfluid staking. Maybe towards the end, we can also get into kind of the competitive landscape of staking derivatives and various solutions that are on the market and how you guys differentiate. But let's get down to how Quicksilver actually liquefies those staked assets. Maybe you can take the example of Atom. I think Atom is also probably going to be one of the first assets, I guess, that will be able to that we can liquefy through Quicksilver. So how does that work? I think you already teased earlier that we don't have to unbond our Atom. We can just do it right away without having to wait 3 weeks with no staking rewards. So explain a little bit from a user perspective how that works, and what's the process behind the scenes when we liquefy our Atoms.
Cool. So yeah, First of all, you mentioned the liquidity staking module. So that's a Cosmos SDK module that has been produced by Zaki and the team at Inclusion. And what this allows users to do is to tokenize their existing delegations. So instead of having your 100 atoms delegated to this validator, you end up with a token in your wallet that says 100 and then the validator's valopper address, and then some index on the end. But essentially a token that is specific to you and that validator that you are then able to then transfer to another account, or move it across chains or whatever you want to do with it. Those tokens still remain bonded to that validator, but you're able to move it to transfer that delegation. Now, what that allows us to do is if you transfer that delegation to the Quicksilver deposit account, and this account is an Interchain account controlled account. So this is two transactions, or two messages, one transaction that you need to send using your ledger on the Cosmos chain. Then essentially what happens is the Quicksilver zone witnesses that transaction hitting the deposit account. It will mint you the requisite number of Q atoms. So obviously if the redemption rate is 1-to-1, you'll get 100 Q atoms back. The redemption rate becomes clearer later on when we talk about auto compounding of rewards. But essentially you will receive the Q atom amount of that represents your atoms. Now those Q atoms are your claim to those atoms. So if you gamble them away, if you lose them, if you send them to somebody else, you lose your claim to those original atoms and to the rewards that they earn. But when it comes back, now once you've done your DeFi thing, you've taken them off, you've used them in whatever protocol you want to, you bring them back to the Quicksilver zone, you burn them. So there's a special transaction type to redeem those tokens. And what that will do is that will cause the Quicksilver zone via Interchain accounts to then retokenize your delegation and send it back to you. So you get back the same tokens that you had sent, the same delegated tokens you sent us in the first place. So we don't have to care about unbonding periods because if you want those tokens to be liquid, you still have to unbond them on the Cosmos Hub. Obviously, if you choose to take those Q atoms off and sell them on a secondary market for liquid atoms, there'll be some secondary market there, some price discovery around what is a Q atom worth. That's going to change over time, as I mentioned. Auto compounding of rewards. So if you shortly after onboarding Cosmos Hub onto Quicksilver, if you send us 100 atoms, or send 100 atoms to the send them to me, that's fine. If you send 100 atoms to the Quicksilver deposit account, then you obviously will get 100 Q atoms. Now, any rewards earned on those 100 atoms over time, when you come to burn your Q atoms to redeem your atoms, you will get back the original atoms plus the rewards earned on those. So essentially that auto compounding happens in the background. It happens on an epoch basis. So there's a 3-day epoch. And at the end of that epoch, all the rewards get withdrawn and they get distributed to distributed into the pool. And this redemption rate is then increased by the appropriate rate.
What is the epoch time again?
3 days.
3 days. Okay. So every 3 days it will update the kind of like simulated or actual rewards.
Yeah, it will collect the rewards on the Atom chain via Interchain accounts, and then rebond them again.
Okay, so I guess that's one of the core features. And by the way, somebody was saying Vish and I in the same room. Yeah, he's right there. I was thinking the same earlier. Like we have the same walls, same background. But yeah, soon we'll be united at Cosmos. But yeah, so can you talk a little bit more? I guess that's kind of like collecting of rewards goes through interchain accounts, right?
Yes.
Can you talk a little bit more of the importance of interchain accounts in that whole system?
Yeah, so interchain accounts is it underpins the entirety of Quicksilver. Without interchain accounts, Quicksilver doesn't exist. So we have on every chain we onboard, we have a deposit account, we have withdrawal account, which is where the rewards get collected. And then there's what we call delegation accounts. And these delegation accounts are essentially buckets that the capital that is onboarded onto Quicksilver gets distributed amongst these buckets. These buckets manage the validators to which these delegations are delegated. This can change over time, and we'll come on to that in a minute. But all of these accounts are interchain accounts. So all of these accounts are controlled by the validator set on the Cosmos Hub in accordance with the logic that is built into the Quicksilver zone. So when it comes to when you send your bonded via liquidity staking module, your bonded delegated tokens to the deposit account via interchain queries, which is a kind of another piece of IBC that we're working with some of the core IBC team and other core devs on implementing. And this essentially allows us to do cross-chain queries and prove that the state of another chain is what we say it is. We witness that transaction hitting. We then send a transaction via interchain accounts to say, okay, distribute these tokens across these delegate accounts. And then at the epoch boundary, we then send another transaction that says, okay, withdraw these rewards into the withdrawal account. And then when the rewards hit the withdrawal account, we then distribute them out and redelegate them. So literally every single step of that flow is interchain accounts. It all happens on the Cosmos Hub. It's just instructed, and the transactions are sent from the Quicksilver zone.
Okay, that's cool. And how about, so there's, from my understanding, what I read through the documentation, Quicksilver is going to be a launch partner of the first version of Interchain security, which means that it will borrow the security from the Cosmos Hub so that Cosmos Hub validators secure the Quicksilver chain or Quicksilver zone. So does that mean there won't be a native validator set on Quicksilver? That means you fully pack to the Cosmos Hub. And also in that context, how in the background, how will the delegations be kind of like distributed to the validators? Is there some sort of like algorithm that says, hey, this delegation goes to this validator? And how is that also affecting the decentralization or centralization of the underlying validator set of, I guess, the Cosmos Hub?
So this is when we start talking about interchain security, it gets tricky because the hub validator set is essentially is acting as a validator set for the Quicksilver zone, as you mentioned. So that at the point we have interchain security, which isn't interchain security version 1 isn't the forever goal. So interchain security version 1 is we use all the hub validators for securing the Quicksilver zone. Interchain security version 3, which will be out at some point after version 1, and hopefully will be involved in the development process for that to some degree, will allow us to supplement the hub validator set with our own validators. So at that point, we will have validators of our own in addition to the hub validators. Now, obviously, we want to use the security provided by the $5 billion of locked up stake on the hub to ensure that everything is as secure as it possibly can be, especially as we're onboarding multiple chains. But that doesn't impact what validators we can delegate to from Quicksilver. So they're two separate things. They just happen to be the same validators in the case of the hub. Obviously, if it's a bit easier if we talk about onboarding Osmosis as a zone, because you're not able to conflate the two validator sets. But essentially, when it comes to zones that we onboard to Quicksilver, so obviously the initial one will almost certainly be the Cosmos Hub, and we'll see how it goes from there. But we don't, or the protocol is not opinionated in who you are able to delegate to. So there's no whitelist of validators. Any validator that is in the set should be able to be delegated to by default. Now, this can be overridden by governance. So governance can choose to exclude a validator if that validator is repeatedly misbehaving or being, it's not performant, or maybe the the governance, the quick token holders decide that actually centralized exchanges shouldn't be included in that set, or 0% validators shouldn't be included in that set. That's something that governance has the power to affect, but by default, it's not. It's not opinionated at all. And the reason we want to do this, where we don't have the whitelist of validators, as seems to be a common approach so far, is with these whitelisted validators, what you would tend to get, with Crescent, we see it's, was it 15, 20 validators? With P-Stake,
I think it's 10. I think it's only 10.
Okay, 10 is it? Well, with P-Stake, it's 7 or 8, if I remember correctly. With all these different protocols, they have a small number of validators that are whitelisted, and generally, just because folks have been around in the ecosystem a long time and people know each other and everything is kind of who you know, it's really hard for small validators to break into these sets. They tend to be just the big names that have already got a majority of stake, disproportionate amount of stake, and as a result, including these validators in a whitelisted set makes the problem worse. It exacerbates the problem. It means that more stake is going to those validators, and actually the set gets more centralized over time. And that's not cool, right? From my perspective as a diehard Cosmos fan, that's not what we should be aiming for. So what we want to do with Quicksilver is give everyone the opportunity, give all users the opportunity to stake to anybody they would stake to natively. We have what we call participation rewards, and these are essentially if you signal that you want the zone to delegate to certain validators on your behalf, and we say signal because it's not a direct. Your Q atoms correspond to these atoms. Every epoch, we take an aggregate view of everybody's signaled intent, and then we redelegate to get as close to that intent as possible. If you are signaling that you want to want your proportion of the pool to be delegated to validators that are lower down the order, will actually give you a higher proportion of quick tokens from inflation than you would otherwise get. So folks that end up delegating to the validators at the top end of the stack, they'll get slightly less rewards in terms of quick tokens. And down towards the bottom end of the stack, you get a slightly higher rate of reward. Similarly, when it comes to governance participation, again, governance participation is something we're absolutely fully behind. We want validators, we want delegators to get involved in governance participation. So again, if you choose validators that have a good track record of voting on governance proposals and participating in governance, then you will get a slightly higher return in terms of quick tokens than you would get if you if you delegated or signaled intent to delegate to validators that never took part in governance. So those are they're the multipliers that we're applying to participation rewards, because we want to use Quicksilver as a mechanism to affect centralization or affect centralization towards decentralization, and to make validators make a conscious choice to participate in governance, because that's absolutely their job in this ecosystem.
Yeah, and I think just a point to add there, while we're on validator decentralization, especially with something like the liquidity staking module coming in, which allows practically all of the stake supply of the Cosmos Hub to be transferred into a liquid staking protocol overnight. If you have protocols with a whitelisted validator set, you could essentially automatically have all stake with 10 validators, right? And I've been having this discussion, in community, in various forums. And I think this debate between a whitelisted validator set versus an open validator set is something we really need to have, because within a year, it's really going to impact what the Cosmos ecosystem looks like. Whether we're going to have, an ecosystem dominated by a few possibly professional, larger, whitelisted validator companies, or validator sets are going to be expanded to include more and more validators. And obviously, our opinion on this is quite clear. That I think whitelisted validator sets are not conducive to chain security in many ways, because if you have a slashing event and all stake is with 10 validators, that makes a pretty big difference. If you have a slashing event and stake is equally distributed with 175 validators, that slashing doesn't look that big anymore. And again, like as I said, like with the whole like small validator thing, like also what we really want is like the small validator community to get more involved, because and I don't want to sound like a doomsday sayer, but within a year, all small validators could be out of business if a liquid staking protocol with a whitelisted validator set takes off and captures the ecosystem. So this whole decentralization element is really important for us, and participation rewards are the way we make this happen.
What would be the argument for whitelisting validators? Because Crescent and P-Stake seem to do it. Is that because they just wanted to get quick to market and it's just easier to like deploy faster, and they essentially, or maybe even they want over time to like open it up, if that's even possible? But what are the benefits of whitelisting validators?
So one of the major benefits of a whitelisted validator set is that you can essentially control the quality of the validator. So the protocol at the end of the day has a tight supervision over the practices, and they essentially know who's to the validator. So the argument, or the big argument, is that this drastically reduces slashing risk, because for most liquid staking protocols, there is a socialization of rewards and risks, right? So if one validator gets slashed, that slashing is experienced by everyone. So the whitelisted model is that, hey, let's control the validator set to 10 or 15 and make sure that they never get slashed, so we don't have to deal with slashing, or the risk of slashing is greatly reduced. But I think the issue, I think it's a valid point, right? And obviously the goal could be that they'll decentralize over time, that they'll keep expanding the validator set to include the entire validator set. Fair enough. But with the liquidity staking module, and with this rapid transfer of assets from staked assets to liquid staked assets, it could really affect like decentralization. And I think what's talked about less is what's the financial risk of centralization. We always talk about, when we talk about risk in the Cosmos ecosystem, it's slashing. Okay, it's 0.01% for downtime and 5% for double signing, right? But what is the risk of centralization? If a chain is centralized with 10 validators, what is the impact that's going to have on the value? Like, why even build products on a blockchain? You might as well just build a centralized product. So how does that affect the value? And I think this is an area that we want to explore more and more, down the line.
I think that's also what Sunny criticized or pointed out. That's also, I think, why he's in general less bullish on the idea of liquid staking in the first place, and developed Superfluid staking, which we can maybe get into later and see how that differentiates. But yeah, it's definitely interesting to have this debate, and I think, yeah, we have to see how other liquid staking providers like Crescent or P-Stake will roll out. I mean, I'm quite in touch with the P-Stake guys, and I think they actually want to decentralize over time, or maybe completely break it up. But yeah, I think it's a valid discussion to have. Another thing that is also affected from this, or maybe you can explain this a little bit deeper, is governance, right? I mean, giving the community a voice to participate in improvements or changes to the native protocol. How does that work in Quicksilver? If I hold the Q atom, for example, does that mean I can equally vote on governance proposals? And how does that work? Do I have to do it through Quicksilver, or what is the process of doing that? And what are like the downsides or the benefits of that system?
Yeah, so governance is, as we said before, is something that's really, really close to our hearts. And for me, it is what separates Cosmos from a lot of the other ecosystems out there, is this on-chain governance and the fact that it works really well. Now, one of the issues, coming back to the topic of whitelisted validators, is with as far as I'm aware, the current designs of liquid staking solutions that exist right now, or ones that are proposed in the near future that we're aware of, you essentially sign when you enter into the liquid staking protocol, you essentially sign away your governance rights. You aren't able to vote as a user, and therefore you automatically inherit the vote of your validator, or the validator that controls your atoms. Now, if you have a protocol where you have 10 or 8 or whatever validators, suddenly you have an awful lot of voting power that is controlled not only by 10 or 8 or 5 individual corporate entities, but actually within those entities you tend to have 1, maybe 2 people that make the decisions as to how that entity votes. So you end up with the entire or a disproportionate amount of governance voting power being controlled by a very, very small select handful of people. And it doesn't feel, it feels very anti the Cosmos governance mindset to put that much power in the hands of people and then not allow them to be overridden. Now, what we want to do with Quicksilver is essentially whenever we witness a vote being cast or proposal being cast on the Cosmos Hub, as an example, we will then mirror that vote in the Quicksilver zone. And then any Q asset holder will then be able to vote on that proposal. And then shortly before the proposal closes on the onboarded zone, we then use Interchain accounts to then broadcast votes to essentially represent the votes that have been cast on the Quicksilver zone. So we use the voting power of the delegations that the Quicksilver zone controls and broadcast those votes directly onto the hub. So essentially, you end up with very, very close to the same governance rights that you would have if you were voting natively. We say very, very close to because unless we ended up with 1,000 delegate accounts and had a 0.1% granularity of vote, we can't get quite that fine, but it would be towards the 1% mark is going to be the granularity between yeses and nos and no vetoes and abstains. So we'll be able to very, very accurately broadcast the intent of QAtom holders on that native proposal.
All right, that sounds cool. Anything to add, Vish, from your side, or?
Yeah. I think one cool possibility this opens up, and which we're working on, especially with interchain queries. What we could essentially do is that, okay, let's take an example. You have some atom, you've bonded it for some QAtom on the Quicksilver zone, and now, like a logical person, you take this QAtom and deposit it in a liquidity pool or use it in lending or whatever DeFi you want to, right? Can you still participate in protocol governance? You have your asset off-chain in a DeFi protocol. And with interchain queries, well, yes, you can, because you can ascertain that the certain asset is there on a certain account on a certain chain and verify it on the Quicksilver chain to actually issue them the governance power that they deserve. And the cool thing about this is that you can't even do it with native atoms, right? If you have native atom in a liquidity pool, you can't use that to participate in governance. And this never really made sense to me. Providing liquidity is such a fundamental operation for a chain, but they essentially get locked out of governance. And with interchain queries, we can make that happen. So Quicksilver is positioning itself not only as a liquid staking hub, but also as a governance hub in the Cosmos ecosystem.
Awesome, yeah. And you mentioned liquidity. That's the name of the game. I think that will also be the name of the game for Q assets. So how do you plan to bootstrap the liquidity for those Q assets? What's kind of the rollout plan? Is there going to be another DEX for this? Will you try to get those assets on something like Osmosis maybe? What is the plan to bootstrap the liquidity for Q assets?
So as of now, there's no plan to build another DEX. I think there are some pretty good DEXs out there that we could utilize. In terms of how we're going to bootstrap liquidity for these Q assets, obviously one big source we see is airdrops. So we are going to have a gamified airdrop where providing liquidity is going to be one of the major tasks. So that's definitely one massive source of liquidity, the way I see it. The other source is that I also see liquidity and liquidity incentives coming from the chains we onboard themselves. And from the conversations I've been having with teams and people in the ecosystem, this argument goes on well. There is this question about a Cosmos reserve currency and the idea that DeFi will drive demand for Cosmos tokens, right? And if DeFi is going to drive demand for Cosmos tokens, it will most probably be a liquid or a liquid stake token. And for any liquid stake token to be good collateral, it needs to have substantial liquidity. So it makes sense for a lot of these zones themselves to incentivize, either provide liquidity incentives or provide direct liquidity themselves. And I think this argument is definitely stuck around with the teams and stuff and the communities that we've spoken to.
So the battle, I think you tweeted it out earlier, the battle between Atom and Q Atom to become the reserve currency of Cosmos is on, and we'll see. I mean, it makes a lot of sense, right? To like just hold Q Atom instead of just Atom, because it already accrues value, and you can just reuse it somewhere else, and you can do more stuff.
I think somebody in like the comments mentioned like QIBC. I think the tweet was the fight is between QIBC and Q Atom. So what we also like envision that in the long run or in the medium run even is that there will be this index built on top of Quicksilver, collateralized by all these Q assets. You have Q Atoms, Q Osmo, Q Juno, Q Akash, and all of this will collateralize into a QIBC asset. And this potentially has the chance of being like the Cosmos reserve currency. And I think that's a pretty cool and powerful idea, really.
It really is. Yeah, it really is. And all eventually underlying secured by the Cosmos Hub. I think this is also a really cool thing. How does the onboarding work for chains or tokens to be liquefied in the IBC economy? I mean, I think you just pick Atom as the first one because it's kind of like the OG IBC token. But if I'm from the Sentinel community or from Persistence or whatever, and I want my token to be liquefied, can I just do it myself, or how does that work?
So in terms of onboarding a new zone, that zone needs to support interchain accounts is the main blocker. Obviously, as I mentioned earlier, everything uses interchain accounts. So once that zone uses interchain accounts, and ideally Liquidity staking module as well, obviously interchain accounts is in the most recent upgrade, which I can't feature upgrade. And Liquidity staking module should be in the row upgrade in kind of June, July time, I believe. So yeah, my best case scenario is a zone has both of those. Worst case scenario, it has just has interchain accounts. Then a governance proposal is created on the Quicksilver zone, and that is voted on by Quick token holders. And once that has passed, the process, which is a handful of back and forward steps to initialize a whole bunch of interchain accounts on the hub, on the onboarded zone, that all happens automatically. So as long as that there's an existing IBC connection, which obviously is permissionless anyway, there's nothing else required from the remote zone. So it's literally as long as it supports interchain accounts, as long as it has the appropriate transaction types whitelisted in the whitelist, then there's completely permissionless onboarding, and that allows us to scale really, really easily in theory. So it doesn't require any effort from the Osmosis team, doesn't require any effort from the Secret team, doesn't require any effort from any of these core dev teams to be able to, for Quicksilver to onboard them beyond just the normal upgrade process in terms of following Gaia's release schedule.
All right. And how is the process with onboarding Quicksilver for interchain security? Is that also something that like as Atom holders, that there's going to be an on-chain proposal after the interchain security module is going to be implemented on the hub, that we'll see a governance proposal popping up from you guys to pack the Quicksilver zone to the Atom kind of like security? And how does that work? Does that mean automatically that all validators are securing the chain, and then every Atom staker will accrue QCK rewards as well, or what does it mean? Oh, you're on mute, Joe.
Yeah, so that's correct. I think once the row upgrade hits, and obviously the code is in that release of Gaia, there will be a governance proposal to say, yes, we want to onboard Quicksilver. These are the terms that the Quicksilver team have offered to pay in terms of inflation of crypto tokens to pay for security. There is some genesis process that needs to happen to essentially tell the Quicksilver application that your this IBC connection exists. This is where you get the the validator set from. And then essentially once that is all enabled and Genesis process happens, all of those hub validators will be running a Quicksilver daemon in addition to their Gaia daemon, and everything just works. We did a run through of ICS Genesis with, not us personally, well, I was there, with the ICS team a couple of weeks ago. Everything kind of looks great from that perspective. So yeah, I think that we'll have to go through that process a few times before we are happy that everything's production ready. But I'm looking forward to it. It's going to be pretty amazing to see it in production.
So just to make this clear for everybody, when I stake my Atom and this proposal passes, that it will also mean that I will accrue value in QCK tokens, right?
Yeah.
And I guess in the beginning the inflation is pretty high because you're bootstrapping the token distribution and everything. So I guess this would, I don't know. Is there any estimates? Like, I don't know. Would this potentially double the staking rewards for Atom stakers, or?
So the inflation in year one for the Quicksilver token is 100%. Now, as it stands, 30% of that will be going to as staking rewards. We have 30% goes back into the incentives pool for future airdrops, which we'll obviously come on to shortly. 30% is slated to go for these participation rewards, and then there's 10% goes to the community pool as it stands. Obviously, those are subject to potentially change if the Cosmos Hub isn't happy with the layout there. But so that's 60 million tokens over the first 60 million quick tokens over the course of the first year will be distributed to Atom holders and Atom stakers specifically. So anyone staking Atoms at the point that Quicksilver is running on ICS will receive a nice slew of quick tokens every 3 days.
And that means for any validator in the Cosmos Hub, or I think you mentioned earlier, centralized exchanges are excluded or could be excluded through governance, or how?
So that doesn't affect ICS. With ICS, every hub validator will need to run the Quicksilver daemon. If they don't, they will be slashed. So that's something for hub validators to be aware of, is that in Interchain staking version 1, they have to run the appropriate software for not just the Gaia chain, but also any onboarded ICS chains.
All right.
Yeah.
Vish, anything to comment?
Yeah, like I guess one cool thing with this is that it really aligns incentives between Quicksilver and the hub, right? Where every Atom staker receives some quick, and that creates sort of like a cyclical relationship between Quicksilver and the Cosmos Hub. And I think that's awesome. And that Quicksilver can also play a part in like the Cosmos Hub or the Atom value accrual story. That's one point. The other point is that I do have a window. I'm not in a prison.
Regarding this comment, is Vish streaming from prison? Cosmos needs to give him a grant, but well, yeah.
Please use Quicksilver so I can get a bigger window.
Yeah, that's where we're at. We're all distributed all around the world. So, and some people are in the prison sometimes. It is what it is.
It is what it is.
Yeah. So one thing that I don't fully understand is how is that coexistence with the Cosmos Hub? I mean, there has always been like discussions, like what's the role of the Cosmos Hub? I think now the focus is 100% on shipping interchain security, and you guys are one of the first ones, maybe the first ones to implement it. But there has also been discussions around the hub maybe becoming what you now are becoming with the liquid staking hub, right? So that you could liquefy staked atoms directly on the hub. Is that something that you are in talks with, I guess, the Cosmos Hub core development team around Billy and the ICF people and the informal systems people? Are you guys talking with them to see that you don't kind of like duplicate and eventually compete with each other? Or is that, I mean, I'm not fully up to date on what's the hottest and latest with implementing the liquid staking module on the hub and maybe making the hub itself a liquid staking kind of like terminal. What is up with that? Is there any collaboration or competition or?
So we're obviously currently now in conversations with Billy and Sam on a regular basis anyway. So when the liquidity staking module hits the hub will, in essence, have liquid staking enabled in that you can transfer delegated tokens. Now, the issue that the liquidity staking module doesn't solve is one of fungibility, and that's why you need something like Quicksilver on top. Now, obviously, Quicksilver is not the only option. We know that Lido are intending to bring their staking solution to the hub. They're relying on CosmWasm being implemented on the Cosmos hub to be able to do that. But we expect them to hit market at a similar time to us, I believe. So there will be more than one option. Obviously, P-Stake's around, Staffy's around. Like there are more than one. There are multiple options coming to the hub. I don't believe I'm pretty confident in saying that the Cosmos core devs themselves are not implementing a liquid staking solution. Pretty sure
I think that's
the case.
I think that's also like I talked to a lot of core contributors and even to Jake Kwan, and he also said, I think pretty much everyone is aligned on that, to decrease the complexity on the hub itself, to make the hub this ultimate source of security, and I think that makes a lot of sense. Do you think? It doesn't seem to me that for Quicksilver to liquefy Atom, it requires CosmWasm on the hub. Is that true, or you don't need it, right?
The only dependencies we have are Interchain accounts and obviously ideally liquid staking module as well.
Because I think that's one thing that there's some debates around, to implement CosmWasm on the hub, as CosmWasm is a smart contract platform, but that would potentially increase complexity, and that's something that actually we don't want, right? So yeah, interesting conversation to have. But is that, you mentioned Lido, and they require it. Is that correct?
That's correct, okay. As far as my understanding.
But I think it's still on the roadmap, I think, right? To implement CosmWasm on the hub.
I believe so. Obviously, it will have to go to a Cosmos hub governance vote, but it's one of those things that I think there are enough parties that are interested in having that functionality on the hub that I don't see there being an issue with it passing.
Okay. Now let's talk a little bit about the QCK token, the Quick token. Since it's going to be rolled out with Interchain security, you already mentioned 30% of the block rewards go to the Atom validator set and delegators. I guess governance is also one of the core utilities on Quicksilver to, like you said earlier, to vote whether or not to integrate new chains. What are some of the core value accruals and maybe some of the tokenomics, some numbers that you can talk through before we get into the airdrop details?
Yeah, I guess one of the core functions, as you mentioned, is governance. But when you traditionally imagine governance on a liquid staking protocol, what is it? It's hey, can we onboard more zones? Can we expand validators? Can we play around with that? But I think in Quicksilver, it's a lot more, right? If we're imagining 100% liquid staking world in a year or two, which I think is very plausible, a liquid staking governance token would also determine to some extent things like security, right? Things like incentives for validators, things like what is an incentive for a validator to get slashed, right? Or to maintain uptime, for example, if all validators are, if there's a pool where stake just goes into. And I think, participation rewards is one of our solutions, but obviously it's not permanent, right? No incentive mechanism is permanent. So there have to be security solutions that come up on Quicksilver and decided by Quick token holders. That's why it's very important for us that Quick is distributed amongst Atom holders, Atom stakers, and holders and stakers of every other asset. So that's one big governance area where we see Quick token playing a role. The other one is obviously building on top of Quicksilver, right? Quicksilver, the way we imagine it, is in its current model just a liquid staking zone, but it's a lot more than that. We expect all this crazy new DeFi things built on top of Quicksilver. And the Quick token then will play an important role in these applications. So liquid staking is a base layer. We get to 100% liquid staking world, and that's when the magic happens on Quicksilver. I've already given a bit of alpha leak about the QIVC. That's one thing that could happen. And you could do things with QIVC, right? There's a lot more that can happen. And all of this, there's an inherent benefit of this happening on the Quicksilver zone. We have interchain queries enabled very early on, and that's sort of been pushed in Quicksilver. And interchain queries, again, being a big vertical of cross-chain DeFi, right? So this, I think, is the real value accruing element of Quicksilver. So this promise of a DeFi ecosystem emerging from a base liquid staking vertical.
Yeah, and for those that joined a bit later in the stream, QIBC, we talked about it around 20, 30 minutes ago, is potentially the idea to have an index token of liquid staked tokens, which is running on the Quicksilver chain, which eventually is secured by Atom, and by the Atom or by the Cosmos Hub. So very interesting concept. I think that might make a lot of sense, because people ask me constantly, like, hey, if I buy Atom, I essentially don't really like cover exposure to the whole ecosystem, right? You actually have to buy one token by itself, but through interchain security and potentially an index token on top of it, on a shared secured zone, this would change a little bit the game, right? And drive so much value to Atom itself. Very interesting, yeah. And now let's talk a little bit. I mean, everyone's probably here to hear about the airdrop. 50%, more than 50% of the Genesis supply, which I think is a bit over 100 million tokens. I think there will be 200 million at Genesis, 1 billion total supply, reached after, I guess, a couple of years. What is the what can you share around the airdrop? Is it only going to be for Atom people? Is it going to be for other tokens that you onboard at the Genesis, or how do people get the airdrop? And what's the kind of like snapshot dates, if you can? Was it already taken, or I don't know? You can share some stuff around that.
So with regards to the structure of the airdrop itself, it's not just for Atom stakers or holder. The philosophy behind the airdrop is that there should be an airdrop for every zone that we onboard, and obviously the idea being that in the long run there'll be a lot of things on these zones decided by quick token holders. Things like validator incentives, so on and so forth. So it's very important that the quick token is distributed to everyone. And that also means that chains that don't exist as of yet. So a chain could potentially release in the future, and they should still be able to receive the airdrop. And about the snapshot date and things like that, I think it's best if we don't say anything with in light.
Was it already taken, or is it still in the future?
It hasn't currently been taken.
Hasn't currently been taken.
No.
It hasn't currently
been taken.
It has not currently.
I will say that much. I'm not going to say when. I'm not going to go into any explicit detail about who's getting what. Now, we did mention earlier that a couple of our core philosophies are governance, participation, and decentralization. So do with that what you will. And that's all we're going to say.
But I guess I mean, in the FAQ, there's by the way, great articles that you push out, also recaps of Twitter Spaces. I highly recommend check out the Medium side of Quicksilver.
That's all Valeria. She's absolutely fantastic. So definitely
and she speaks Spanish as well, right? I've seen her on.
She's Puerto Rican, so yeah.
I've seen her on Cosmos Spaces, Español. So everybody who speaks Spanish, Valeria nailed it there. But so in the FAQ, it says the Genesis airdrop will be more than 50% of the initial Genesis supply. So does it mean that like this Genesis airdrop is going to be distributed for I guess Atom people, or are there more tokens that you onboard at Genesis in the beginning?
So at the moment, we're only committed to Atom at Genesis at this point in time. If there are other zones around at Genesis time that are have all the requisite prerequisites enabled, then there's absolutely nothing stopping us onboarding those zones either at Genesis or very shortly after Genesis. That 50 is 51.35%, I think off the top of my head, of tokens is that's not all for one airdrop. So what will happen is there'll be some airdrop at Genesis for those very, very early zones. We're in the process of building out an airdrop module so that we can do retrospective airdrops later on. So this incentives pool, basically, there'll be a module account within the SDK or within the Quicksilver zone, controlled by governance, So at some point in the future, there'll be proposals saying, okay, we want to onboard Secret, for example. Here is a snapshot of Secret accounts that qualify and their weights. We want to allocate X amount of Quick tokens to Secret. Once that governance vote passes, then those allocations will take place and can be claimed at that point. So, yeah, the plan is for literally every single zone that we onboard, we want to be able to do these retrospective airdrops, so additional airdrops, as Vish said, so we can get the token in as many hands as possible across the ecosystem, and whether it's people that have come in directly into Cosmos, or whether they're coming because of Osmo, or whether they're coming to Secret or Terra who don't necessarily have 100% overlap. We want to be able to get these tokens into the hands of Cosmos people, and that's been our kind of core focus from the very first day of fundraising. All of our fundraising is from Cosmos OGs, validators, people, well-known people in the space, because we want this zone to be controlled by the Cosmos community, not by Ethereum token holders, not by Solana token holders. Like, it needs to be Cosmos all the way through.
And I think you guys raised a little seed round. I think I read that somewhere. Did you already publish that? Is that already finished, or?
It's not been published yet. So we're just in the process of finalizing SAFT agreements and things. So that as soon as that is done and signatures are dry, then that will be there'll be an article announcing that seed round as well.
Okay, but there's not going to be any other round, public sale, any other private sales, or?
Not planned currently, no.
Okay, all right. Gurgi is asking in that context whether these airdrops are going to be validator specific.
Never. It's one thing that I am very, very not. Well, we're not validator specific in terms of it only applies to certain validators. Your choice of validator may or may not have an impact on how much you get, based upon previous discussions we've had. But I'm very fundamentally against these airdrops that have taken place recently, where it's scoped to one or two different validators. I don't think that's particularly fair in terms of distribution. So every atom staker, probably above some threshold of, we've not worked out that detail yet until we run some numbers, but we'll get Quick tokens, and who you delegate to will have an impact on that.
Okay. Yeah. So I guess on a big picture, like as always, just try to avoid any like centralized exchanges, inactive validators. There's a bunch of them on the Cosmos hub, especially because it's such a kind of like old chain in Cosmos, right? So be mindful about that. And there's so many validators now, also since the set expanded to 175 validators from the community, people that just contribute a little bit of code, a little bit of review, a little bit of like community building. So there's a bunch of validators to choose from. And I think it also makes sense to not just bet on one validator, right? You can also distribute your stake on various validators that you just find cool. So, but Vish, you wanted to add something?
Yeah, no, just on that, I was saying like we want to include as many people as possible, right? That's, again, the core philosophy. So we're against exclusion, because that's, again, similar to like a whitelisted validator set. We don't want a whitelisted airdrop set, right? It's all for inclusion. But
no, I think there's some models that I've seen where obviously projects that run validators themselves, maybe they got partially funded through the rewards of the validators and could fund their protocol and their team and all the expenses, to maybe say, hey, if you delegate to any validator, you get an airdrop, but if you delegate to us, you get some extra, because through your delegations we could fund it or accelerate our go to market and all these kind of things. I think that makes sense, but exclusively for just one validator, just I don't know. Yeah, but it's all fair. I mean, it's an open market, so people can do whatever they want.
I mean, it's free money, right? Like, if you're complaining that you haven't got enough, the amount of free money you've been given is unfair.
Exactly.
Look in the mirror.
Exactly. Yeah. And if some new project were to say, hey, I want to give 50% Genesis airdrop just to exclusively to stake C2 delegators, I would obviously not be mad, but of course everyone else would be mad. So it always depends which side you're on. But yeah, it is what it is. I think we can do some questions and then wrap things up. Or is there anything from your side that you want to share, need to share, any alpha leak that you haven't shared yet, that has never been shared before?
And I mean, I think the only thing that I was going to mention is if anybody is still in Amsterdam, there are still 7 Quicksilver stickers floating around Amsterdam that haven't been found yet. So if you find one and post it on our Twitter, then you'll get 100 tokens at Genesis.
How many tokens?
100.
100. All right, that's good. That's good. I like that. All right, let's get into some of the questions. Oh yeah, we didn't get into this actually. So Superfluid staking. I mean, you already we talked a lot about whitelisting validators. I think that covers probably P-Stake and Crescent to a degree. What about Superfluid staking? Maybe you can segregate the two and see what are kind of like the risks and downsides or benefits between your liquid staking solution and Superfluid staking. Maybe okay. Maybe I can briefly explain Superfluid staking. Yeah. It's basically the inverse of liquid staking. So what liquid staking does, it liquefies staked assets, and then you can use them in DeFi. And Superfluid staking, as kind of like created or invented by Sunny and the Osmosis team, says, hey, let's do DeFi first, and then you can stake your LP share, for example, right? So there's a bunch of pools in Osmosis where you can provide liquidity. Atom Osmo, for example, you get an LP token, and then you just allow the protocol to accept that token as a collateral to stake, which earns you extra yield. Right now, in the current version, you can only do it for Osmo, but I think is it also with interchain accounts, I guess, and also IBC integrations that you can also stake your Atom at the same time. So you'll be able to earn double rewards on both chains, and you provide security. So that's kind of like the inverse of liquid staking. Another question is, what are kind of like the downsides, the risks, or anything that comes between those two models, if you compare them?
I think the risks of liquid staking, it's something Sunny's been quite vocal about. Like, there is obviously an avenue whereby a malicious validator, they'd have to put an awful lot of effort into it. And it would be capital intensive to be able to make a big impact. But it's technically plausible that a malicious validator could act in a way that would obviously cause a slashing event that would affect the entire pool. Now, for this slashing event to be of significant value, that validator would have to have a massive amount of delegations from Quicksilver, specifically to that validator. I think by incentivizing decentralization and trying to spread that load across as many validators as possible, it somewhat mitigates that risk. So that's, I think, the biggest risk that faces liquid staking. Superfluid staking, I think, I've just described it before as targeting a very different audience. Now, there was, obviously, when Osmosis came out, delegators or Atom delegators had a choice to say, okay, I'm either going to stay staking my Atoms, remain as I have been for the last however long. I'm happy with the staking rewards I get. I want to secure the zone. Securing the zone is important to me. Or they had the opportunity to take their Atoms out and put it into Osmo, into a liquidity pool, and earn better yields on it. So that was a conscious choice. Obviously, that you have the risk of impermanent loss. You're choosing to take on that risk for better returns at the cost of no longer securing the Cosmos Hub. That was a conscious choice. So, and a whole bunch of folks did this, and this is a completely valid thing to do. I love Superfluid staking. I think it's a great idea. It allows. I previously described it as a bonus for LPers. Actually, I got a bit of flack for it, and actually, I've taken on board what this chap said, and I do agree. Now, it's a great way for folks that are already LPing to be able to additionally secure. Now, obviously, you're not secure. You're not using as much of your assets to secure the zone as you otherwise would do if you were staking natively. But no, it's a great addition to the chain, and now in terms of its future in the market, I would love to have quick pools on Osmosis one day with superfluid staking or interfluid staking, I think they're calling it across chain, securing the Quicksilver zone. Now, I'd love to be part of that ecosystem. I think it's a great product. It just targets an ever so slightly different audience who have a different set of priorities and different risk appetite. But obviously, it does constrain you to only LPing and staking. You don't have the flexibility that you do have if you engage in liquid staking.
Yeah, I think like adding to that, right? I think so. Liquid staking, there's two major risk verticals, right? One is slashing, and the other is the risk of a hijack, right? Someone will hijack the chain and run away with the assets, and the other one is slashing. So how do we prevent people from hijacking the chain or attacking it, or like a 51% attack? It's decentralization, and Quicksilver does a fair bit for that, as Joe mentioned. And then the second risk is a financial vector, which is slashing, which is 0.1%, and 5% for double signing. So again, fairly contained and spread across. So okay, there's another way how we mitigate risk for slashing. If like, let's explore what happens if a validator gets slashed on Quicksilver. If a validator gets slashed on Quicksilver, what happens? So the participation rewards are a function of their decentralization. It's how big or small they are and their performance. So in a super competitive performance environment, if one validator gets slashed, they immediately lose a massive amount of participation rewards and drop to the bottom of the UI. In many ways, I think this is a greater punishment than the 5% slashing for double signing or 0.01% for downtime. But again, a temporary solution that will give us maybe 2 to 4 years of runtime before a more permanent liquid staking incentivization solution can kick in. Good enough. So that's the risk profile of liquid staking, right? And Quicksilver has put in all these mechanisms to mitigate it. With regards to the second question, how I'd compare liquid staking and superfluid staking, apart from what Joe said, I think superfluid staking will have a very neat user experience. You don't need to deal with a Q token. You don't need to deal with another token, move it around your wallet. It doesn't clog up the interface. And that's awesome, right? But what liquid staking provides is composability. Like you can have a Q token that you can send over different zones. And I think this was like an idea we discussed in the Cosmos spaces, Twitter spaces, that you could have like a collateralized position or a collateralized loan which pays itself with appreciating Q assets. Like products like these can be built. So Q assets or liquid staking appeals to this larger DeFi community. So I think that is in some ways is the trade-off I see between the superfluid approach and the liquid staking approach. I think both have that market.
Yeah, and also cool that you pointed out that you're basically targeting different audiences. Superfluid staking is super easy to deploy. It's basically 2 clicks. So yeah, everyone that's in Osmosis pools providing liquidity, please make sure that you're actually superfluid staking, because otherwise you're just missing out on extra rewards. Plus, you're not securing the chain. But that's just on a side note. So let's do some more questions. Here's one, and I thought about this while I was reading it. This could also be great to onboard institutions or companies that want to have exposure, but they don't want to go through these complex ways of provide liquidity, doing this, clicking here, and then yield farming, and then blah blah blah. No, you just get Q assets or eventually Q IBC, and you have exposure to the ecosystem that accrues value, that generates cash flow in a sense, right? So, is there any kind of like demand that you see from the institutional sector?
And the index thing that Vish mentioned earlier, kind of I think the primary driver for me for that is the fact that at the moment you have, I can't keep up with how many chains you've got. You say 45, I believe you. That's now, this has gone up from 23 months ago, whatever it was. The growth is phenomenal, and for folks getting involved in the space now, you have to pick and choose which projects you want to be in. There's no way you can keep abreast of every single project and what it's doing, how it's performing, what you need to understand, how the technical differences between them. If you are bullish on Cosmos, or if you're a fund or institution that wants to be exposed to the entire Cosmos ecosystem, actually having whether it's QIBC or whether it is specific a DeFi token, or whether it is a green eco chain token, that you can create all these different index tokens that represent different things that allow you to be exposed to multiple projects without having to be knee deep in exactly how every single one of them works. You're hedging against any one of those projects taking a downturn. I think that this is going to be massively attractive to institutions and funds who want to ape into Cosmos, but actually don't have the manpower, don't have the desire to get into the weeds on currently 45, in the future 100, 150, 200 chains.
Yeah,
like
go ahead. No, you go ahead.
Yeah, I was saying and also adding to that, and I think I saw another question related to this. It is also there is a huge retail target too, right? We're planning to make this as simple as possible from the user experience level. It's you come into Quicksilver, connect your wallet, choose your asset, choose your validators, enter the amount, stake. That's it. It's going to be a very straightforward and neat user experience, and we're trying our best to ensure that.
Yeah, now I feel this is equally for retailers, especially for cosmonauts that are even aware of all this, right? I think another thing is also to raise awareness that these solutions actually exist, and then we'll see if institutions join the game. Let's do a few more quick questions and then we wrap it up. Martin is asking, what is the roadmap for the next few weeks? Maybe you can give some timelines. I think we haven't talked anything about timelines yet towards the launch.
So we are hopefully, fingers crossed, this week going to have our public testnet live. It's taken a little bit of a while to get here. We were hijacked by Amsterdam and my holiday with the kids. So we're now on track to have the public testnet live towards the end of this week. Incentivized testnet is still slated for the end of May, and we'll essentially go from there. But that's kind of we originally had planned 2 public testnets. We kind of rolled those both into one. Obviously, we're in a much better position in terms of features than we were 4 weeks ago. So end of this week, keep your eyes peeled. There will be an opportunity to be involved. And incentivized testnet is going to be a combination of, it's not 100% worked out yet, but it's largely going to be focused on Quicksilver users rather than a lot of incentivized testnets historically have been focused on validators and incentivizing validators. Because of the ICS angle, we want to actually get more users involved and reward users for taking part in our incentivized testnet. So there'll be lots of tasks for users to complete. I guess minting Q assets, using Q assets in various forms, and testing out all the functionality of Quicksilver.
All right. Finances is asking if you guys are at Cosmos, which is late September. So this could potentially be a good time to announce some big things, right?
Plane tickets are already booked, and
nice.
I very much hope to be speaking there as well.
Nice. That's awesome. Yeah. We look forward to see you here. There's also people from the Spanish community. Joy is here, Finanzas. Valeria, people saying Valeria nailed it on the Cosmos space in Spanish. Wants to get her on his show as well. So Valeria, if you're listening to this, maybe you can reach out to Finanzas. I got you, bro. What else do we have? Big Suck is saying he delegated enormous amount to the CryptoC to Validator if that's decentralized enough to get a good multiplier for this airdrop. We're at least not a centralized exchange, so I guess we're not going to get punished on that.
And how's your governance participation? You voting on everything?
Yeah, we're on there. Yeah,
awesome.
We're basically like governance is such a big thing that basically one of our team members is just full time doing governance at this point. Excellent. It's wild. Yeah, there's so much.
I think there are definitely validators that I think over the course of the last couple of years have got a bit blasé about governance and don't necessarily partake in it as much as I think they should do. I personally think it's one of the core responsibilities of a validator is to understand what's going on in the ecosystem, communicate with delegators, and make sure that you vote. Because if validators don't vote and then users don't vote, that voting power has gone to waste. So I think validators definitely have a responsibility to make sure they participate in absolutely every governance vote, even if it's abstain. Like if it's something I don't understand or don't have an opinion on, abstain is valid. Not taking part doesn't cut it for me.
I agree. Basil is saying if we're gonna get lunch, he's actually I think downstairs waiting for me.
Is that to me? Is that to me or you?
No, that's yeah, we can go together. I mean, probably just
take me a few hours to get there.
All right, I think we're good. I think we're good. This was really great. We're almost at 1.5 hours, so really appreciate it. And yeah, look forward to see you. I guess also potentially next week in Prague, there's a Gateway conference. So hopefully see you there. And then we'll see you latest at Cosmos here in Medellin, September, the last September week. Actually, we're like going to expand it to more days. So it's going to be really cool. And yeah, thanks everyone also for asking the good questions, for the engagement. We had roughly 100 people throughout the stream, like between 80 and 90 or something like that. And I guess the call to action for people is to go follow you guys on Twitter to not miss out on any updates. Let me actually look that up. I think it's Quicksilver Zone, right?
That's
Quicksilver
correct,
Zone, yeah, all in one word. Let me actually drop that in the chat. And then what else should they join? Telegram or Discord?
Yeah, there's Telegram and Discord groups that I can never remember the URLs to, but it's linked from our Twitter on multiple occasions. So go find it.
Yeah, I got a Twitter here. So yeah, join those groups, ask questions, and yeah, I'll see you guys.
See you in Prague.
Hopefully soon. Yeah.
Yeah.
Take care, guys. Thanks.
Thanks. Bye.